Hey, welcome back everyone to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 920, Black Geopolitics. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, hit the notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. There's a doc in the description of each video for you to follow along with and reference. I'm also here with my co-panelists, MOT, Nagone 11, and Renaissance Man.
What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Mike?
Interesting times that we're in right now. We had a brouhaha that came up at the White House Friday afternoon with Trump and Zelensky, President Trump, President Zelensky of Ukraine, along with J.D. Vance and other dignitaries such as Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. Let's get into what happened and then we'll give our analysis.
For the good of the world. I'm aligned with the world, and I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred, and I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough, but you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
I would respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014 and
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. That people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him. Me, like a new president in 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel. We signed ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken the ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influenced.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influenced.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's
with
back
all
to
respect to
you.
you.
Far more than a lot of people said
Very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once? This
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of
What are you
America
speaking about?
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not
Yeah.
speaking loudly. Your country is
Can I-
in big
can-
trouble.
can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No,
Can
you've
I
done a lot of
answer?
talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this.
I-
You have a damn good chance of
We are
coming out
staying,
okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this
We
cabinet.
gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid
thank-
president, $350 billion.
You voted
We gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave, but they had to use our military.
What about we are
If
speaking?
you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
you invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course he has.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I
Again,
tell you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of
accept
times,
that
thank
there,
you
accept
to
that-
American people.
accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers.
Don't-
Listen,
don't please,
you're running
Mr.
low on
President.
soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a
with
ceasefire.
guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
Doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what-
That
what
wasn't
is-
with me.
It
That was
wasn't
with
with you.
a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
This
That
is
was
your-
that
this
was
is
with
your
Obama.
president. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards, but without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry.
It's going to be a tough deal to make,
Uh,
because the attitudes have to change.
what if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do you do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you
but
saying?
what
She's
if
asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now?
But they have
Okay?
broken ceasefire.
What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, oh, the laptop from hell was made by Russia. The 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam. And he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that stuff. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that. All right, we'll see what we can do about putting it together. Thanks, sir. We'll see. I don't know. Guys, come on.
All right, let's start with Nagone 11, man. Nagone, what's your take on what just happened, what you just saw?
Unbelievable. Never seen anything like this. Been watching politics from time as a kid till now, 55 years or so. Unreal. Not to say that maybe something like this can go on behind closed doors or whatever, but out front, no way. Without question, he's appealing to his base, and taking shots at everyone else, and people are respecting him, and so on and so forth. All right. Anyway, things have changed around. I personally do not think that there is a very coherent foreign policy here, but before they were with Ukraine, now they're against, almost looking like they're against Ukraine. Do my deal, and if you don't, you're done. Not thinking long term, because if you're really looking at these minerals and so forth that we're talking about, or that's kind of on the table, if let's say Ukraine goes down to Russia, they're going to be dealing with Putin anyway on that as well. So I guess Trump has already played his hand here. So it's the darndest thing I've ever seen. And saying, hey, listen, this is great TV. Yeah, this is great TV. The part of this was a show as well. So kind of bizarre, but the long-term effects of this, I don't see it being very positive, especially with Europe and others maybe looking to change their horses a bit here and change up, which could be another factor that apparently these two are just not thinking about. So in my view, not very sharp diplomacy here, being played out this way and playing to your base and playing, on TV like this is some kind of game. I just I've never seen anything like this.
All right, MOT, what's your take?
Well, my take is this dude's got panel jumped live on TV. This was nothing but an actual. I mean, you couldn't have planned this more perfectly if the Kremlin had planned for him to be humiliated on live TV. There's no real reason for anybody to respect the United States or this president after this has happened. There are many people who said that Zelensky should have bowed his head even further. If you listen to previous speeches, he thanked the United States for stuff. But at the end of the day, what they mean by take a deal is surrender to Russia. He has to make all the concessions. Russia doesn't have to make any concessions, even though they invaded. They had a UN Security Council vote where the United States voted with North Korea and Russia against this guy. I mean, we know how the thing happened. They invaded. That's how it happened. But I just think we're in a dangerous situation, and this is the first month. Well, a month and a week, and this is currently where we are with the foreign policy thing. And he's the one who's playing around with World War III. No one else is playing around with World War III. Telling this guy to pretty much surrender the majority of the actual producing parts of his country to an invader as a sweet deal is crazy. Like I said, I'm shocked Zelensky is still alive. The way he's acting at this point, it's nearly inconceivable that he's not going to tip off Russia to where his actual location is and get this dude out of there and out of the way. There's no reason to lie about this dude's approval rating within his actual country. There's no real reason to do any of that. And there was no real reason to have this quote-unquote good TV moment by bringing this guy on and humiliating this guy in front of the entire planet. And what do you think this does? Like, you think he's going to stop at this? No. He's going to go through Lithuania and Poland and everything else. That's exactly what he's going to do after he takes this bit of land. But this is the consequences of an actual election. All these people who was actually saying that things were going so well, these real estate people and everybody else, this part right here is something that they're not paying attention to, that you can't justify. You've been president before. There's no real reason to act like this in the public. unless you're trying to do something else, which is get this guy to surrender by bringing him to the United States and try to make him look unreasonable when he's just being gaslit and trolled to his face by J.D. Vance and Trump himself. This is an absolute disgrace. I don't know if people in the future who actually need the United States help, what that help is actually going to look like. I think this actual rare earths deal was about profiting him and corporations at the minimum, not really trying to help the military industrial complex build more planes or carriers or destroyers at the maximum. I think this is nothing but a money grab. And that's what and all the evidence shows that this is what this is. And most people in the military knows that this is what the case is. You have people who work for the national security apparatus 40, 50 years in absolute shock and disdain what a Republican president is currently doing right now to an actual ally. Withdrawing from the UN Council every way that you could and being pro-Russia and voting with North Korea and Russia on things. There's really no excuse for it. I mean, the country has fallen. And we have nobody else to blame but white working class Americans for what we have right now. And that's something that I don't want to hear out of anybody's mouth. This is what happened when you stay home. Thanks.
Renaissance man.
Yeah. I was gonna say, no, add all y'all kind of made a lot of points I was gonna make, but this was clearly a setup. You hear Trump at the end saying, "Oh, this makes some good TV." And I think we had done enough. Some people have seen enough or something like that. Vance clearly kind of escalated the situation, but it's not good for U.S. foreign policy at all. It clearly shows that Trump is really in with Putin, and it's just really trying to give him justification to walk away from Ukraine, and really give an even worse deal. Because you have to remember too, this is on the cuff of Pete Hegseth basically giving away the negotiating position, as well as Trump meeting in Saudi Arabia with Putin and not even involving Ukraine. So all of this is just showing that Trump is not really serious. And it's wild because, like MOT said, you're literally walking away from allies, which is crazy, in favor of Russia. Who, to Zelensky's point, what he was trying to bring up was the fact that they've signed multiple agreements and it hasn't stopped Russia from breaking them. You pointed out, what happened under Obama, it happened under Trump as well too. And you have to remember today, the Israelis broke the ceasefire agreement that was in place with the Gazans. So this idea of Trump that they're not going to break the agreement under him, it's not even factual. You have one of his ceasefire agreements. Granted, he didn't make it; Biden made it, but it's his to kind of hold up and keep going. It's already broken there. So I think at the end of the day, Trump is really shooting the United States in the foot, because U.S. intelligence has basically said Putin's not stopping with Ukraine. He doesn't really even want a ceasefire. He wants full control of the country. And this is just going to lead to more and more conflict because, as Zelensky said, he was like, hey, if you basically throw us under the bus, at some point this guy is going to come back and come after you, because this guy's not going to stop. He's going to continue to expand, want more of Europe, and basically, more of your allies, which if you look at the amount of trade and resources that Europe buys from the United States, a war there or Russia getting a bigger foothold is not good for a strategic interest of the United States. So once again, Trump and Republicans, you can even see it. I think Rubio was in here. His body language really told it all. Like, he knows this is not smart. It's not good. But the wild thing is, more people are rallying around Zelensky. Trump obviously wants to feed it to his base to try to suggest, these people are not being grateful, but the rest of the world seems to be rallying around Zelensky. And the thing Trump and a lot of people miss when they talk about the amount of money that's been given to Ukraine is a lot of that. What happened was that money was just basically what happened was they took weapons that were in inventory from the United States. They sent those over, and then they literally refilled the inventory by buying more weapons from various manufacturers to refill the inventory. So it wasn't like we just wrote them a check for X billions of dollars and they just spent it. It was, no, we donated equipment, we manufactured more equipment and sent it over there. So this literally created jobs and actually sales for the United States, which people don't realize. They just think it's a check going to Ukraine.
Yeah, good analysis. I think, I'll instead of auto dubbing exactly what you all have already said. Here's my take. Zelensky's first language is Russian, but he can speak English enough to hold a conversation. But what I've noticed is that he's caught off guard, like MOT said, this was an ambush, that his ability to respond in English is different than how it would be in his native language, which is Russian. He doesn't even speak Ukrainian. And so while they're coming at him from different angles, he has to calculate how he's going to respond, because he doesn't anticipate that this is going to be, what he anticipated it to be. He came there to talk about the exchange of resources for security. And Trump wants all the resources but none of the security, and Russia wants all of the land and none of the compromise in the first place. And so his frustration, and based on his body language, his eyes, the bags under his eyes means he's not getting enough sleep, slightly red, slightly irritable, in fact even more irritated by the ambush itself. And then although this clip doesn't show it, you had someone heckle him about not wearing a suit, when no one said anything about Elon Musk not wearing a suit, running around the White House with his belly out and in a lower back tattoo. No one said anything about that, right? But when it comes to Volodymyr Zelensky, I think it must be very frustrating, and I think to myself, when I see other people who don't necessarily speak English all that well, and an American is attacking them with jokes or doing the dozens on them or something like that, and they don't have ability to respond, they feel vulnerable. And I think in this scenario, he felt very vulnerable. He came there for a certain reason, to get to try to work out a deal, and there was no deal to be made, and so it became a waste of a trip, and then they threw him out the White House in the end anyways. And so I think for Volodymyr, I feel really bad for him, even though I don't support the actual conflict itself, especially on the side of the Ukraine. I think that when you're in that position as a president, you have to worry about assassination attempts. You have to worry about the next escalation point that's going to happen, and then you also have to take into consideration how many more soldiers do you have to sacrifice for the time being, because it's not guaranteed that you're going to be able to go another year into the conflict itself. Trump is right that the United States did supply weapons. I mean, that's obvious, but the problem here is you have Minuteman batteries Patriot missile batteries inside Ukraine that are actually useless right now, because he can't get any actual replenishment for missile capacity. So what's the point? Why have them in the first place if that's the case? He doesn't need them if they're not doing anything. Most of Ukrainians' defense is really coming from drone technology. It's really more of a drone conflict. The Russians have drones coming from Iran, and the Ukrainians have been able to build drones, a drone factory, by the dozens per day, that are taking out, a lot of Russian artillery. And that's been proven on the battlefield. A lot of video coverage and evidence to support that. Even taking out some of the North Korean soldiers, which is very interesting. How they found these people. So I think for the most part, to your point, MOT, that the Russians would probably kill this guy, but I don't think so. I think the Russians want him alive just enough to force a deal. Because if you kill him, you won't get nothing. You get a stalemate, and then you get nothing because nobody's there to sign any documentation or paperwork, or they'll just embolden the Europeans to even bring all their forces up to the front line, because they definitely don't want T-55 or T-72s crossing the flat plains of Ukraine, into Poland or any other place, Latvia or any other place that's close into the borders. And so I don't know. I think that the long-term aspect behind, let me say this, the short-term aspect behind this is that the EU is going to step up, whether they like it or not. They don't have any other choice at this point, because after he left here, he did go to London to meet with his European counterparts. Now, what happens after that, we won't know until after this video is recorded. But I think what's going to happen long term is that you will probably have some peacekeepers beyond the capital, ensuring that the lines of contact are not breached, primarily because the Europeans don't want this. Because if that's the case, if Trump is going to take this sort of position of withdrawal from European security, then what's the point of NATO? And what are we doing with all this, NATO compatible hardware? What was the point of even designing all this stuff for? Europeans have basically wasted all of their ammo caches for this conflict, only for Trump to come in here and say, well, I'm not going to do anything. I'm sorry, peace, I'm out, But, it's just that one of these things that an area where Trump can easily govern, he dropped the ball for the most part. He can't even get a deal now because he threw this guy out the White House. What are you going to get out of this? I agree that, yeah, you need the American ammunition and material to keep this going, or at least provide security. But at the same time, he's not going to get that under Trump. That's just not going to happen. They already basically made that null and void. So what are you going to do? You're going to have to wait for the Europeans to come up with their own production capabilities, and we don't know how long that's going to take. We don't know if that's going to take 6 weeks, 6 months, or even a year, for that matter. And I don't know if he has a year to play with. He may have 6 weeks, he may have 6 months, but a year, I don't know. That's because come November, December, then you can have a frozen conflict, and I don't know how long they can hold out for. And so this is going to be interesting. But for the first 100 days of Trump's presidency, he dropped the ball in Ukraine. He dropped the ball in terms of governing the White House with executive orders, freezing up, federal officials and firing people, letting go CQ Brown, from Joint Chiefs of Staff, and putting incompetent people in his cabinet. Really, right now, he's not governing. He said this is going to be good for TV, but, is it really? Because you haven't done anything. You're basically just slapping this guy around. You jumped him. And we see this sort of, performance and behavior in places like the Black Manosphere, where people get on a panel, they ambush you, put you in a chair, hook you for 5 minutes, and then try to sun you. And it's like, I'm glad that Volodymyr stood his ground. I'm glad that everybody got to see how Trump actually can govern when in time of crisis. We saw the last time when he was in office with COVID. During the pandemic, he had no ability to govern. He delegated the responsibilities to Mike Pence. They all dropped the ball, and you had 500,000 deaths. With Trump, this time around, he hasn't learned anything in terms of crisis management and governance. He just doesn't know how to govern. He doesn't even know the history. He tries to correct Volodymyr Zelensky and say, oh, it was in 2015. No, he was there. It was in 2014. How are you trying to correct him on a history that you don't even know? But that's the low information aspect of this of MAGA and the administration, that you have people who are unqualified to really be in these positions, managing crises and governing, and no one's really questioned the legitimacy of this. Now, if this was Biden and he was walking around aloof, people would say, oh, get this guy out of the White House, get him out of here, he's too incompetent, and Sleepy Joe and Genocide Joe, one hand he's too sleepy, and the other hand he's going around killing people, and no one knows what's going on. But when it's Trump, it's give him a pass. He really taught Zelensky a lesson. He's really putting his foot down and standing up for America. Meanwhile, the price of eggs are through the roof. People are paying $20 a carton right now. Gas is up 30 cents on diesel. No one's saying anything about this. Farmers are out of work. They can't get access to material, and federal officials are being fired, and no one knows what's going on. And this is what is happening in the first 30 days. We're not even talking about 100 days. If this is going to continue to go on, I don't see what the value is of this administration when it comes to global governance and global security. Anybody have any thoughts on this?
I think that's pretty. I think that's been pretty well stated. That's precisely what's going on. What I'm really concerned about is what is his foreign policy? Okay, is he a you saying he's a globalist and this and that, an imperialist? So his job, he wants to be the imperial leader of the world. Is this what is this the White House view on global politics at this stage?
No, that's a good point, because Volodymyr is actually, President Zelensky is actually shorter than both, I think, Trump and Vance, right? And at least in this picture he is. He's got to be at least 5'5" or 5'7" or something like that. What he's doing to Zelensky is what he did to Trudeau of Canada, right? The Canadian Prime Minister, right? And he also tried that with the President of Mexico, right? This idea that I can just push all these smaller people around and just use blunt, just sheer force. Might makes right. In his mindset, it makes right. People don't really govern like that anymore. The world is more stable now. You can't just go around just doing whatever you want. But he's trying that with people who thinks he can get away with it, as it be, because Volodymyr is in a very compromised position, right? He doesn't really have much to work with, so he's relying on the United States hardware to come in, and the HIMARS and the Patriot missile batteries and F-16s and things like that. He needs to talk to the United States, so he doesn't have that much of a choice. With the Canadians, Trudeau specifically, they have to do business with the United States because they share a border with them. Same thing with Mexico. And so what's happening here is he's bullying a lot of people who he thinks he can get away with it. For the most part, from a geopolitical standpoint, he knows not to try that with China. He knows not to try that with what do you call it? Any of your Middle Eastern partners, like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, or any other Middle Eastern ally, right? Or what's considered to be an ally. And so there's certain people he knows not to try that with. And so he's being very slick. Go ahead, MLT.
So at this point, you have to recognize that I think Europe is going to mobilize. They're going to have to. They don't have a choice, because if they gave away Ukraine, that's pretty much telling them how things are going to go from that point forward. So they're going to have to bolster things in Poland and everywhere else. They're going to have to do a show of force to prevent these things from actually getting worse. So you can have like a Russia/European conflict went on because the U.S. refused to provide any type of leadership in this type of situation. And their style of diplomacy is, we're just going to do some off the top rope stuff, invite you halfway across the world to stomp you out on TV and then not provide you any resources. And Europe is not supposed to come to their defense. Now that they see that the United States is not providing any type of leadership, you're crazy. They're going to have to mobilize in ways that they never thought that they had to, but you start to make these people think about things in ways that they shouldn't. Like if this was the 1940s or 50s, it would be different. This is modern times. People are going to find new ways of getting things, planes, technology, There's a lot out there. Yeah, people are not really dependent on the United States like they used to. And Trump is operating in like a 1970s or 80s aspect in 2025 when it's hardly needed. And doing all this stuff with tariffs and all this kind of stuff, I'm like, do you realize that there's other people who make stuff? It ain't just us. I mean, we have the intellectual capacity, but the raw materials can be gotten from anywhere. It's like the USAID. It's like all these people voted against their best interest because they thought that there was going to be a happy medium and they weren't going to be affected. Only thing you need is one incompetent person who doesn't care about the consequences of his actions at the top. And a lot of things are going to get upended that used to be quote unquote stable. So I don't know what to do at this point except for just try to outlast these 4 years or how many ever years that this is going to last. So that's just kind of where we at.
Renaissance man.
Yeah, I think you all summed it up pretty well.
Yeah, I think that if Trump thinks that he can walk away from NATO and kind of withdraw, because you still need Congress to sign off on something like that, and I think that Supreme Court as well, and I don't think he's going to get any. I don't know who's going to get on board with that, because there's still a lot of folks who may have served in within the Republican Party that are kind of like, whoa, wait a second, you're going too fast here. Let's think about this, right? I don't know how many people within the Republican Congress would in the House would actually support something like this. But what he can do is just ignore what's going on in Europe and not, make any commitments to anything. And it's kind of like a blind date. He's just standing it up. The EU is getting stood up, or his NATO partners are getting stood up in regards to continental security. I mean, at that point, what's the point? If the United States is putting 15% of its 2% commitment into NATO, then why did you put all that money into it then? That seems like a waste to me, and it seems like a waste of labor cycles. It seems like a waste of technological co-creation. It doesn't make a whole lot of, because people bought F-35 fighter jets for this reason, right? Because everybody had to be on the same page. Now you don't have that. What was the point of that, right? And then you got Elon Musk talking about what the F-35 is obsolete. Really? You really think Lockheed Martin? See, this is what I'm saying. You have if you elect a clown, you should expect a circus. And I think what's happening here is no one knows how to govern. You have people who, even though this guy served in 2017 to 2021, he still is governing the same way that he did 8 years ago. He has no idea what's going on. He doesn't even know the history, right? And so, he confuses Spain to be a part of BRICS, which doesn't make any sense to me. The BRICS is a global South, coalition, but he includes Europeans into it for some reason, but that's the sort of mindset that you have, and in the way he's treating, his own allies like Canada and the Ukraine, it doesn't speak very well about what's going to happen over the next 4 years. You can't really rely on him, and I think that the Europeans are starting to figure this out, and maybe Macron is right that they should build a European army outside of NATO and just rely on that, and let NATO kind of go into the dustbins. If the US isn't going to lead on it and they're the biggest stakeholder, then what's the point of them putting any stake into it? Why did you bring in Sweden and Finland? Why did you have all of these sort of talks? Turkey can't even get F-35s themselves. They have to rely on Eurofighters from the EU, and it's just like he's not really bringing anything to the table for the lack of a better description here. Trump is not the guy who's better than Biden at this point. Biden, yes sir.
I was just looking at Trump from his last term. He was questioning our participation with NATO then. So he's been consistent on potentially looking to pull away from NATO. He's been consistent with that. So I don't believe that this is a great surprise. I'm just trying to figure out what their global strategy really is here. What is their competent global strategy in geopolitics? And that's still a big open question. We can certainly look at some things and extrapolate what he's doing and say XYZ, but where is this guy really going? And when you start to alienate your allies and you're looking to make a whole other move, that puts a lot of people on edge. And we've seen how this game was played in the late 19th century, early 20th century, and kind of what were some of the results that came down from that, as we all know. So what's his game plan here? And then and that's what I'm really trying to figure out from these clowns, and I don't seem to be getting much of an answer from it. Anyway,
let's think about all his cabinet, right? You have Trump himself, who basically is playing the isolationist role. You have J.D. Vance, who is basically carrying the MAGA message under Trump, so he can't undermine Trump, but he's carrying the MAGA message. You have Secretary of State Rubio, who's saying something different than both Trump and J.D. Vance. And you also have Pete Hegseth, who is just running around with his head on fire. And then you have Elon Musk, who is, running around with his belly out, and with his belly button pierced and the lower back tattoo. None of these people are really on the same page, so your point, Nagone. So when you ask the question as to, you're trying to figure out where this guy is going, they don't even know where they're going, right? They want to take on Iran and they want to take on China, but they also want to align themselves with Russia. And so what you have is this sort of access of Pax Europeanism, right? This sort of the United States, Washington, Moscow, Pyongyang, North Korea, against the EU, Palestinians, and potentially even China, for that matter, Beijing. How logical is that? I mean, if you're in Taiwan, if you're the president of Taiwan, then you're looking at what just happened and you're like, can we still rely on the United States? Because that's our only ally, right? They're the only ones who sell us weapons, and they're the only ones who provide us intelligence. If Trump is treating Vladimir like this, then what does that mean for us? How can we rely on it? You become unreliable. So what's the point?
No,
there's nothing coherent here. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, RM.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was going to say, Mike, that's the big problem for everyone, really, is what Trump doesn't. I mean, Trump kept talking about World War III, but the fallout for this is probably going to be, this continues, is going to be nuclear proliferation. Because you basically got Ukraine that gave up its nukes under the Budapest Memorandum, basically for a security guarantee, and kind of look where they are now. You've got obviously the UK, France, which has nukes, but at this point, if this is what the US is going to do and it's going to be its policy, then at this point you're talking about South Korea that's probably going to be wanting to get nuclear weapons, Taiwan, Japan, India. Well, I believe India already has it, but wanting to further further strengthen their arsenal. So you could really see an arms race break out behind this, which is kind of dangerous. And that was the whole thing that people who say they don't want World War III. One of the big things was reducing nuclear weapons in the world. And you're talking about more states that are going to have basically access to them. This is why this policy is really insane. You have the Trump administration really sitting up here pretending like Russia is not an enemy of the United States, and it's just it just shows Trump has clearly been infiltrated by Putin some way, somehow, because, I mean, you're just ignoring history if you think that, Russia is somehow an ally or not a threat to the United States.
No, I think he see, for whatever reason, I think it's the big man politic that he sees in Putin that he does not see in Trudeau or Keir Starmer in the UK. He doesn't see them equally on the same level, weight-wise, geopolitically, as he sees Putin. And so he looks at Putin as somebody who's a big man because Russian media, Russian propaganda is pretty good, right? They showcase Putin on horses, riding around on horseback and doing jujitsu and judo and stuff like that. Yeah, and he plays hockey too. That's cool. But you're not going to be him. They're going to use you like the rag doll that you're going to be, because they're going to get all of their concessions from you. You're gonna take off the sanctions. You're gonna return an ambassador back to Washington. You're gonna give them everything that they want, and they don't have to compromise on anything. So they're gonna play you. They're gonna move their rook and their bishop around that chessboard, and you haven't even moved your pieces at all. You're compromising everything. And so all of this security that the United States has worked on the last 30 years since the dissolution of the Soviet Union is all for naught now, because this guy just gave it all away. The last time you had a president that tried to compromise with Moscow, it didn't work out too well for them. In fact, his nephew was right in his administration. And so I don't know how long Trump is going to be able to make it over the next 4 years if he does take any further action in capitulation to Russia and compromise on Ukraine. One person, just to bring this up before this is my closing thoughts. One person that would actually be turning over in their grave is Brzezinski. Okay, Brzezinski was Ukrainian. He was vehemently against the Russians, and so. Did he get some things wrong in the grand chessboard? Yes. But in this scenario, had he been looking at this, I don't think that, I don't know, man. I don't think that Trump would make it very far with Brzezinski being alive today. Even Colin Powell and many others. I don't think that they would, because you don't see anybody from the Cold War backing up Trump right now. John Bolton, nobody. There's nobody who's still alive today that can look at this. Where's Bush Jr. at? You don't see him around. Where's Cheney? You don't see any of these folks coming around to kind of congratulate this guy. Even what's his name? South Carolina.
Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham is actually, kind of backing up Trump, but from a distance, by saying that this guy has to step down. But you can't overthrow a sitting president and then think that that's going to
solve
solve
something. During a time of war, when there's supposed
Yeah.
to be a peace deal.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so
Think about what a Colin Powell would have thought about this.
that's what I'm saying. There's nobody from the Cold War who was actually involved in any of this that would actually support what Trump just did in the White House. That would never fly with Condoleezza Rice where's Leon Panetta, right? Like all these people who actually made, the security architecture that prior to January.
Henry, what about Henry Kissinger? The architect of détente, indeed. What about that? He wouldn't have been playing with that either.
Yeah. So those are my thoughts. Any last words from you gentlemen?
Just buckle up and stay tuned. These things are going to get worse. It's only 30 days in, and all these people who's celebrating or what they are celebrating, it's time to hold their feet to the fire. I mean, these people are supposed to be getting all these concessions for black people under Trump. Mm-hmm. So you got to start holding them responsible. And now's the time to just keep striking these dudes on everything, because it's going to come around 3.5 years from now, and these dudes are going to try to posture themselves as, well, what am I gonna get? It's like, no, man, get the couch. Just stay on the couch, bro. But that's just where we at. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to kind of agree with certainly with MOT there. These clowns and fools and miscreants who are out here running their mouths right now and looking crazy as they are not to be taken seriously. You have to look at the facts and look, and you cannot be ahistorical looking at any of this. You have to be sharp on top of this and look what's really going on. And if you are that, and you are doing that, this is unsettling. This is quite unsettling. So I would say, just keep, very much for those who are going to keep their eyes open on this, do that, because there's a lot going on, and I cannot really say where a lot of this is going to go. This is, we're in some uncharted territory that we have not seen since the end of I would say the 19th century coming into the 20th. I'll just leave it at that. But thank you, Mike. Thank you for inviting us up once again.
Renaissance man.
No, I agree. It's really wild times we're in right now. It's gonna be interesting over the next few months to see where this thing really lands. But Trump is really clear on what he wants to go and do, and it'll be more interesting to see how long this appeasement strategy works for Russia, because the intel's already saying he wants to take all of Ukraine. So Trump tries to pride himself on being this tough guy, but and is now quote unquote doing diplomacy. But we'll see how long any of this really lasts, and quote unquote Putin respects the United States. So
Indeed. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button on the way out, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust.